Podcast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the Eagle Eye Podcast. And Happy New Year to all of you who are joining us. And what better way to kickstart the year than by talking all things Club America. Now, for those of you who are watching us right now over on YouTube and or Twitter, the layout seems a little bit different, and we do apologize because we had some very much technical difficulties because of what is going on right now over here with me in California with the wind and the Wi-Fi situation. It's not going as smooth as we wanted it to be for today, but we still wanted to give you guys a show. We still wanted to bring to you guys a preview ahead of the match against Queretaro, and of course we'll talk about kind of objectives and goals for the club in regards to this 2025 season. But joining me to do that is none other than everybody's favorite cowboy, Dylan Jimenez, and SoCal resident Chris Rivera. Gentlemen, how are we doing this very, very odd evening? Dylan, you're
I
muted.
hear Dylan. Yeah, I can't hear him.
Oh, my bad. I said I'm cold. It's cold in Texas right now, so.
Cold in Texas. All right. Well, hopefully you stay warm with that sweater, and hopefully the blood gets pumping when we start talking Club America to keep you even more warm. Chris, how's it going with you?
Good. I mean, for some reason, I'm not dealing with all of that right now, but I feel bad for people that are because there's a lot of fires and whatnot. But for me, it's kind of chill night. There's wind, but not heavy wind. So everything good over here.
All right. Well, I'm glad to hear that on your end everything is going well. Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know if you guys will hear the wind in the background. I don't think you guys will because I think I've managed a way to kind of cup the noise, but the wind is going crazy behind me. You guys will hear maybe the window shake here and there. But yeah, it wasn't ideal. Definitely not how I intended for this show to go. But nevertheless, gentlemen, we are here and we're here to talk all things Club America. And what an off season it's been. And it's been a short off season to begin with. I mean, America has crowned themselves champions, maybe 4 weeks ago? So it's been a very short period, very short time frame within that and today. So, I mean, we got plenty to talk about in such a short period of time, which is crazy. So I guess we might as well just jump right into it. And I think we need to address the elephant in the room here, Dylan, don't we? There's no better way to start off this podcast than by addressing the fact that, we had a scare that we were going to be dismantling our team and mainly our coach in Andre Jardine. But nevertheless, the scare kind of went away and we ultimately came out favorable in this whole ordeal with Andre Jardine. Of course, I know all of Americanistas listening to this will know exactly what I'm talking about, but just in case you don't, obviously Botafogo Dylan came in with a very, very lucrative deal for Andre Jardine to go and jump ships and take over the helm over there. I know you just as much as I am a very much pessimist. I knew that your pessimism was weighing in and thinking, okay, this was the end of the golden era. How did you think this ultimately was going to end?
Honestly, like you said, I was just expecting the worst. I mean, really before, the reports started coming out, he was saying just the way everything went, it's over. Like, it didn't even feel like we were going to try to even retain him. And so I was honestly just like upset. I was like, well, at this point I was saying, like, who do you bring in? Like, how do you replace, somebody that's marked himself as a legend in the club? It was definitely going to be hard to replace. But ultimately, like you said, staying, and looking forward to the season to see how it plays out. And, I'm just really happy overall right now.
Yeah, ultimately, happy is the word that we can all use. Chris, you kind of were on the other spectrum of this. You kind of were leaning on the half glass full situation, and you kind of had hope. Ultimately, what kind of led you towards feeling that way rather than maybe clinging on to what me and Dylan were hoping, which was dread at that, this manager could potentially be leaving us.
It's not necessarily that I was optimistic or because there was a point where I'm just like, oh yeah, he's leaving, right? Just because everything you read. It was more of the arguments I would see and I was told, right, where they're promising him this, he's promising that, more money, home, Libertadores, World Cup of Clubs, and to an extent, I was just like, okay, let me sit back and just kind of think about it from Jardin's standpoint. They're promising him Europe, and they're promising him potentially national team, which people would just assume it was Brazil, right? To me, I said, okay, he's having the same projection with us, right? He's going to the same destination with us. Yes, maybe Libertadores or not even World Cup of Clubs. I would say more, and maybe the ownership from the club, from the Brazilian club, was more of a tempting thing. But I kind of viewed it as in, well, what if he fails? Like it's a like he's already going to that direction with us. Like going to that team wasn't this big jump that people made it out to be. Like unless it was really a money thing, then okay, I get it. But at the same time, it's like if this summer we get news that Jardinez leaving for the Brazilian national team, it's not gonna surprise anybody because he's already been a youth Brazilian coach. He already won gold in the Olympics. He knows these players, these Brazilian players as well. So for me, I just questioned everything. People were talking about Libertadores. I'm sorry, bro, but I think we as fans tend to glorify things more than they actually are, right? Like, yes, Libertadores is a great thing. But if you're asking me, right, let's say I'm an owner of a club and you ask me, would you rather play CONCACAF or Libertadores? You get to choose, but the end game is the same. You're going to play in a World Cup of Clubs. You know, which one would you rather? Well, I'm taking the easier one, and I'm getting paid good money in Concacaf too if I win it. So I'd rather have that, and that's where kind of people were just losing me with these arguments. Like, they sound good as a fan, but what if the coach is just saying, that's cool and all, but that going home to play that, I could do that whenever. So for me, I just questioned a lot of things, and really just looked at it from what realistically would make a coach want to go there. Guarantees, right? And the only guarantee was gonna be money. The only guarantee. So from that standpoint, there just wasn't any point to just look at Jardine leaving and restarting everything. Restarting everything. He's gonna have to do good with that team. He's gonna have to do all that. And this whole like, oh well, the ownership has European teams too. Well, yeah, but he has to do good. They're not just gonna give him that team just cause, right? Oh, we promise you. It's like when Inter Miami signed Pizarro and everyone's saying, oh, but he's gonna leave easier from MLS. He's gonna go to a European team. And what happened? He doesn't perform, and he leaves. He does end up leaving to a European team, but as a free agent and as a connection with that coach, right? Same thing here. What if Jardinet were to leave and he doesn't do good, right? He's not gonna have the same promises anymore because he didn't perform to what they expected. So for me, is with America, it's just a way more guaranteed situation. Like I said, whatever happens this summer, would it surprise me if a national team comes in and says, "Here, like we want you because you're performing with your club in America." And even Brazilians were saying, "America's a big club." I mean, we shouldn't even be surprised as fans. We know how big America is, right? And I think maybe fans love to just minimize what Liga Mexicana is because of whatever reason. But at the end of the day, Liga Mexicana is considered, especially in Latin America, as one of the top two or three best leagues in Latin America. So, like I said, I just looked at all of that and said, he's gonna end up staying. There was a point where I was just like, okay, he's gonna leave because that's too much money, right? 50% more, that's a lot of money. But every other argument they threw, I was just kind of just like, I don't know if that's gonna convince them.
Yeah, I mean, a lot to dissect from what Chris just said right now, Dylan. takeaway I think that I was that Harin is preferring to play Real Esteli on a Wednesday night rather than playing Flamengo or a Boca Juniors, and that speaks volumes. And I like it. I like it. Um, I mean, ultimately, I think from the fact we all kind of were worried, right? We knew that Botafogo had good money, and the projection. I mean, the project that they presented to Jardine looked like it was a very lucrative one at that. But kind of like how Chris mentioned at the end, Dylan, America still kind of found a way to top all of that and kind of maybe use the club's glory and use the club's kind of greatness and stature to kind of maybe reinstate that confidence that he is in the place and he is right to kind of sail this team into a new era. Honestly,
Yeah, and I think when you look at it too, I feel like Gardner has some. He feels like he has some unfinished business with the way Conca Champions went, and so I think he's definitely eyeing that. I mean, sure, like I think we'll talk about it later too, but like sure, like we sit here and we'll definitely want a fourth title, but I think obviously again like it was last year, the priority is Conca Champions at this point. If you walk away with that, and Chris says it a lot too. Just trying to, win that regional trophy because this is something that the team needs. I think it's been a hot minute since we've really been in that position to lift one, and so I just think he realizes too he has unfinished business here. And I think he wants to finish that business before he even tries going somewhere else.
no, absolutely. I think you're correct in that sense, and I think he knows that there is unfinished business in that, and hopefully, he kind of gets his revenge this year, specifically speaking, as we'll talk a little bit later on in the podcast about where America's going to kind of put all their eggs in one basket. But ultimately, there's a lot of nervousness, and to think it was only about a week's time that all of this kind of unfolded, Chris. Right? It was someone had reported it maybe a couple of days prior to New Year's Eve. All of us were kind of scrambling to see who was going to kind of release what. I know a lot of reporters were probably calling all their contacts in Brazil, trying to see whether or not they could get information. Ultimately, this gets decided, I think, what is it, last Thursday? Or am I mistaken? Was
New
it
Year's Eve, I
Thursday,
think. No.
Friday, somewhere around there? So, no. New Year's Eve is when they start contacting him. When does
Okay.
America
Yeah.
kind of publish that?
Oh,
Let me see.
2 days ago, I think. A day ago, 2 days ago.
2 days
He
ago. Okay,
arrived
so
like what,
that's
Saturday? He arrived Saturday.
Friday, Saturday, somewhere around there that
Yeah.
America kind of um, puts everything to bed there and says, Jardine is staying. And so ultimately, that kind of took us all out of focus in regards to the upcoming season, right? Because we were thinking, great, now we're going to have to scramble for a manager. What is going to happen to these players? All of this kind of going to be a big old roundabout. But now, ultimately, we can now shift focus back into, again, the start of the new year, start of the season, and kind of start planning for the road ahead, which is going to be quite a trickery one. But I think that, you know, this team has showed that they're capable of doing it and producing a lot, and especially in the final third of the season. So we'll see where things land specifically. But yeah, as far as the Jardine thing goes, I'm glad that it it started early and ended early, if that makes sense, Dylan.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean, here we are. Some of the players, returned recently too, and so he's back. So, it's good to just kind of get that out of the way, regardless of the season starting so quickly now. But it's good to know that going into this first week that he'll be back on the sidelines.
Absolutely. Well, that is the Jardine news and everything that kind of unfolded there. Ultimately, Jardine is staying, and hopefully America's working on a very good lucrative contract to give him kind of his dues. If anyone deserves to be paid very well, it's definitely him. So I think maybe there was kind of that incline that America was going to maybe pay him a little bit more, maybe not necessarily right away, but in a negotiation for a new contract. We'll see, obviously. But yeah, that is the Andre Jardine news in regards to him potentially leaving, but ultimately staying with Las Águilas del América. All right, now Dylan had mentioned CONCACAF Champions League, and this brings me up to our next topic of conversation here on the podcast, and that is regarding league objectives, not just league objectives, but just a season objective of what is ahead for the first 6 months for Club America in 2025. What does that mean, gentlemen? Well, it means that we need to talk about what takes priority over what this season. We know that everything that is put on the table, America ultimately needs to win, but we know that one title is going to carry a lot more weight than the other. Dylan, you had just talked about and mentioned in regards to CONCACAF Champions Cup. I'm curious to where you think the team stands or lands in regards to priority with trophies. Is it going to be getting that CONCACAF Champions Cup? Is it going to be kind of focusing on making even more history in winning a Tetra Campeonato? Or you take both of them as kind of weigh it out and see where it is to fall? Because I would make the argument that this CONCACAF Champions Cup doesn't hold as much weight as the previous one did, because that one actually had a ticket to the Club World Cup. This one will give you a ticket, but not for another 4 years.
Well, you and I kind of touched on this, right? To answer your question just quick and short, it's everything. I don't think there's one that's more prioritized than the other. I think it's going to be one of those situations where when the game comes, that's our priority. It's not looking back or forward. It's more on in the moment. I know a lot of people are going to say CONCACAF Champions Cup. The reason why I don't, and you and I had a very small conversation about this, but I was reading comments, and in Mexico, no one really cares about CONCACAF like that. I think that has become a thing where it's a very selective people that are kind of saying, "Oh, you need to do this," World Cup of Clubs, and I not even say, internationally, people don't necessarily look at the World Cup of Clubs as this prestigious thing. Obviously, with time, right, with history, eventually you actually look at it more serious. But for me, I'm looking at it, everything the same, because I think, you know, before we won the bicampeonato, if you would have asked me, we probably would have said, you know what, this is more of a priority. Then the bicampeonato came, and and I told you guys, when we got eliminated by Pachuca, I said it. Well, no one's getting fired. Like if it's as prestigious as we kind of paint it, someone's getting fired. And if we didn't make Liguilla, I think we would have seen firings or at least a lot of transferable players and whatnot. So for me, if you want me to ask you what I think the greater priority, maybe it's league, right? Or it is league, but if you're asking me how the team is going to approach it, everything's going to be a priority. I think I think America wants to show, right, and we kind of have to, in the sense of our own pride and ego, that hey, four in a row, we're making history, modern day football, not this 1905 ass titles that they try to argue with us about, right? We're talking modern day, more teams in the league, more money, higher competition, and to be able to get four in a row and distance ourselves even more from everyone else, I think that to me might be the overall bigger priority. But at the same time, everything's a priority, and neither of them are going to clash with each other where it's to the point where you have to decide one or the other. No, it's going to be all or nothing.
Okay, all or nothing. Dylan, where do you land in regards to that argument? If you're Santiago Baños, if you're Emilio Escarraga, where are you putting all your chips? Or are you kind of dividing them and kind of putting your eggs in different baskets, kind of the way that Chris was alluding to? Or do you think that there is one that takes more priority over the other?
Well, I think for me, because I know a few of these players, probably still feel like they have that chip on their shoulder of, you know, how it was against Monterrey of, what about almost 3 years ago? Well, 4 years ago at this point, my bad. And so I feel like some of them are going to want, that back, want that chance again, to be able to lift a trophy like that. But I think obviously, Chris also has a point to the extent to where, everything has to, be on the table. I think we really kind of saw that last year a little bit with Ferdinand and the way he was really kind of rotating these squads, because, some of these players, were starting in CONCACAF, but, on the weekend he might not see them start, but I think they got some optimal minutes whenever it came to the weekend, to keep them going. Because I think Ferdinand knew too that, that it was really, we have to go after both, regardless of how, any of the outcome can be. But I still think, in a sense, for a club that hasn't won, this trophy in what feels like a while, it's been a long time. I feel like there's going to be some kind of precedent, some type of need to go out and get that trophy. But again, like Chris said, everything's on the table. We got to go after everything. I agree with that and everything. But I feel like in some ways, Gronk going to take just a tad bit more of a need and a want for some of these players, and I think for the club too.
I completely agree with you in that sense, and I would make that argument, that strong argument, that yeah, you kind of need to prioritize CONCACAF Champions Cup, only because you're going on that 9 to 10 year drought, like that anniversary is slowly creeping in. The last time we won it was that 2015-2016 season. So really, honestly, it's kind of looming over America, and the biggest kind of argument that any of our uh, oppositions have against us is the fact that yeah, we can proclaim to be the biggest team in Mexico. We can proclaim to be this big, tough, scary team, but in an international sense, we have done little to nothing. We fell flat on our faces consistently in every Club World Cup that we've participated in. We've looked shallow in CONCACAF Champions Cup at times, not being able to get over that hump of winning it. We've gotten so close with that final against Monterrey back in 2021. Yeah, the semifinal defeats to Toronto, semifinal defeats to Pachuca. So I feel like America has made themselves a little bit of a ridicule whenever we do participate in these international competitions, that I think that we need to put our best foot forward in kind of saving face in that sense, and ultimately kind of fixing that picture and being able to proclaim that yeah, we are the biggest team, not just in Mexico, in all of CONCACAF, in all of our region, and that we could be toe to toe with the giants of Latin America, like your River, like your Bocas, like your Flamingos and stuff like that, in an international sense, right? Not just speaking domestically speaking or fan wise or all that stuff. Internationally speaking, having a presence and having a record that showcases that you're capable of doing it outside of your home. And so I think that's important. And I would agree with you there, Dylan, that CONCACAF Cup will maybe take that priority. And I think, I'm wrong, guys, but I think one of the reporters had mentioned it too. That I don't know, was it Julio Ibanez that said that they were kind of prioritizing Champions Cup and Leagues Cup, which I know some people aren't happy to hear that, but ultimately, kind of the international competitions is kind of what they're going for.
Um, I don't know. Chris might have seen that. I'm not for sure.
I saw the Leagues Cup thing and I just rolled my eyes. I think maybe they're prioritizing the prize money, but I mean, but that's the point, When they're saying prioritizing, they named everything in that list. It wasn't just like, oh, it's a league. No, it's the priority, which we should be doing. We shouldn't be saying this or that. We should be prioritizing everything. But like I said, my argument a couple months ago, right? There's going to be tournaments that are going to cause uh, jobs, right? People are going to have to leave if you lose, you don't accomplish this and that. I don't think maybe CONCACAF could create that. I don't know because if we're being completely honest, when Real Esteli beat us, you probably would have seen way more than we what we saw right from the seat being hot and all that. But in the, end of the day, I think league is what's gonna like. I get your argument of the aunties have these art. Hey brother, if I'm being completely honest with you, they were harder on us when we didn't have the 14th. So that kind of tells me what's more prioritized when it comes to Mexico, right? I think everyone would agree that, or everyone would eventually agree after seeing everything that in Mexico you really only care about league because your outside competition in CONCACAF isn't to the same scale as you, right? I know people are going to say MLS, but let's also be honest that MLS teams don't have the history nor the accomplishments to really be put up side to side with a lot of these Mexican clubs. And I think that's the reason why people are always going to view league as the highest prestige in this region, and more specifically more for Mexican teams.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a wrong assessment either. I do feel like the league is very much prioritized all over Mexico, but it's one of those things where I feel like America has such a strong hold on the league. I mean, the gap is widened to what now, 4 league titles to our closest
Yeah.
competitor, which is Chivas. Not to say that you can kind of get lazy and not have to produce. Of course, you still have to produce. It's what the club demands. But I do think that you can kind of have a buy in this sense and think, okay, but the argument can also be made to the fact that this CONCACAF Champions Cup doesn't hold that much weight because the next Club World Cup is not going to be for another 4 years. So you technically have another 4 years to get that ticket. But again, you go back to the argument of it's going to be almost 10 years that you haven't won this competition and you claim to be the biggest and best team in the region. You can't hold that title if you can't produce it on an international stage either. So I do
And
think that
I
America
agree with you
needs to
too.
kind of
Like
balance
we
it.
I think we all agree in that stance, right? I'm just more of my, I guess not necessarily argument, but my stance is more of the overall perspective of it, right? You, I, Dylan, we would all agree that hey, we need to win international because our aunties, like our haters, whatever, aren't necessarily just in this league. We hop on social media and it's also MLS fanboys, right? So I get it from that perspective. It's us against everybody, right? But if you look at it from an overall standpoint, it might just be a Mexican American thing as we are, where it's like, oh man, that MLS team is annoying. While you kind of read these comments from actual fans from Mexico, and it's like, why do I care about so and so if I don't even they probably don't even understand each other while they talk, you know? So it's like, why would I care about that competition, right? And same, and to an extent, I kind of get it, right? I kind of tell you guys if a Mexican club is facing the MLS club, I'm rooting for the MLS club because at the end of the day, they're not my rivals, and the Mexican clubs are, right? To me, it's super cringe when I see people saying I'm rooting for Mexico, and it's like you're rooting for Pumas, bro. I'm not rooting for Pumas. They're my actual rivals, right? Like if I really rooting for Mexico, I'm rooting for the national team, not for another club that competes with mine. So that's kind of what my stance is. So but I agree with you guys in the
Yeah.
sense of, yes, this is international. Let's say we win a World Cup of clubs, right? Especially with how the format is nowadays, where you don't face a European team in the semifinals, you face a Libertadores winner in the semifinals. We could easily go and do what Tigres did and what Pachuca just did, right? We could easily do that and face a European team in the final. Whether we win or not, who knows? Because in the, end of the day, you do face the bigger wallet. But in the day, it is more prestigious if we end up winning that, right, over everything else. But at the same time, I'm aware of just the perspective of league is just the argument in everything Mexican football.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just kind of the world we live in. And I've made the argument before. It's not America's fault that we were placed in Mexico, or not necessarily that, but that we were placed in our area where CONCACAF is, right? Like, like Pangea wasn't nice to us.
Yeah.
It could have been better. We could have
Yeah.
dropped us off in Europe, but regardless, it kind of is what it is. Before we kind of proceed any further, I do want to apologize to everyone who is watching this live over on YouTube. It is not the best quality. I know, and it is by far not up to our standards here, and I do apologize that. Um, and I'm also apologizing for everybody that is on the chat, especially you, Ricardo. I'm seeing all the chats that you're attacking me with. Usually 9 out of 10, I would show them on screen so everyone else can join along. But we are having technical difficulties being able to kind of bring that over to the live stream right now. So again, I do want to apologize for everything. We are going to work on this, and we are going to have a much better visual show next week. Hopefully the audio is at least up to par, and then next week we'll make sure that we bring you guys the utmost show possible. But Ricardo's saying that I'm sounding like a Chivas fan right now. I don't know how or exactly at what marker. And
I don't
he's
know. I
saying
don't know.
that
I don't know if I feel
I
good
have my
about the
MAGA hat on.
comparison. I don't know if I like my comparison, but it's a compliment, I guess.
Oh, the Dia phrase, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, absolutely. Philip Ortiz is the last comment I'm seeing here saying, Ivan, who you going for, Galaxy or America in the CONCACAF Champions Cup? Everyone knows that it's America first above any other team in the world. So America first, and
We will
always
be there.
has and always will be,
We
and we
will
will
be
be
there.
there. Yeah, and they can only see themselves in a semi-final, by the way.
No, he's
Unfortunately,
talking
they
about
can't see
Campeones
themselves
Cup.
in a. Oh, in Campeones Cup. Sorry, I thought you meant in CONCACAF Champions Cup. Yeah, absolutely. We'll be there if and when America is capable of getting there. But right, sorry for getting all sidetracked. Sorry for all of that. I just kind of wanted to apologize to our live audience. Whoever's listening to this over on Apple Podcasts or Spotify must have been like, "Wow, what a what a mess they had on the live show." But hopefully, you guys are hearing at least uh, decent audio coming your guys' way. Um, all right, gentlemen. Well, we've talked about kind of objectives where America has to kind of see themselves. We all know that at the end of the day, everything that's on the table has to be won. That's just kind of the requirement for Club America. And we'll see as the year progresses where kind of each of our eggs land in what basket and ultimately what we're capable to accomplish, right? And this is just kind of the beginning and kind of seeing where we all think that the shift will be. I think we'll get a better idea of the direction maybe mid March. We'll see whether or not America is kind of focusing a lot on Champions Cup, League, and all of that good stuff. Because there's a pretty big gap from when the league starts to when we play in CONCACAF Champions Cup. So you could wrap up a lot of points. You could already kind of have your top four secured in the league. That where you can kind of maybe dwindle a little bit and focus on Champions Cup. You could give yourself that luxury, but again, you have to kind of learn from your mistakes from this past season and maybe not mess around too much in the first stages where you could be winning very good matches and racking up some very good points.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's
I don't
move
know if you
on
asked us a
from there.
question or you're just telling us.
It was a question, but I don't know. Dylan just kind of and you went, so
Yeah,
I guess.
'cause it sounded
Well,
like a statement, so I was like, oh yeah.
You kind of said it all.
I thought I would kind of jump off from that, but okay. Regardless, we'll move on into the next segment here. Let's talk because I know everyone's been dying to hear what's going on with America in the January transfer window. Who's staying? Who's going? What's going on? How are we going to define our squad? And honestly, it sounds like there's been nothing going on right now. Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but really, that's nothing but just smoke at the moment. Nothing really concrete.
Yeah. The Ledesma negotiations only, but I'm seeing mixed reports of PSV rejecting it. And they're negotiating a new contract, and America left. But then I'm also seeing that America still in negotiations. They just sent a super low. It's funny how low the offer was. It was basically not. It didn't even hit 1 million, and it's like the rest were bonuses that if he hit, they have to pay PSV. It was very very low, and they're supposedly still in talks. Leaving, no one. I don't. The Richard stuff kind of slowed down. Well, they from what I've seen, he never got an offer. That there's interest, but never an offer. Valdez, same thing. They're open to selling him, but he's not receiving any offers. And yeah, we're kind of stuck in a very weird position when it comes to that because Igor can't be registered unless someone leaves. So there's a possibility where nobody leaves and we could only play Igor in CONCACAF.
Yeah, it's a very odd situation, Dylan, that again, America seems to have found themselves in, and it feels like it's our own doing yet again. Maybe not necessarily because, we're bad at contracts or stuff like that, but maybe it's because we just kind of haven't found that key formula on how to move players or how to transition them into other clubs, right? We know that there's a big interest for Richard in Santos, right? Why not strike maybe a loan deal in that sense and maybe try to figure something out along the way in where you free up that foreigner spot, yet you still are capable of kind of, managing the salary books and all that good stuff. It feels like a
Yeah,
broken record here on the podcast that every time that there's a January transfer window or summer transfer window, that we're always here at the very end thinking, well, what are we going to do at the end? How's this team going to get itself fixed? And we're not seeing a complete America until like jornada 4 or 5.
yeah, and for me personally, I was thinking about this all day today, especially when I was writing some of my stories. I was like, it's hard to criticize this team like I did, this past summer, when it came to the transfers. You know, and it seemed like once Quinones left, like I think we kind of like knew like okay, this team's gonna regress. I obviously the Davila deal came in like what like toward the end of the season. It felt like, and we didn't think that nothing was ever gonna happen with that. And unfortunately, he gets hurt, but y'all saw the criticism I was making with the club, like like okay, like things are moving slow. Like if we have the money to go out and buy us after the Quinones, so like we're not doing it. Like we're moving too slow, and that's where I feel like it's hard to criticize. To see how slow the market's kind of been, because even in past January transfer windows, Ivan, like you kind of mentioned, it's kind of always left to like who's staying, who's going, who are we bringing in, and we're kind of in that same boat again. And I feel like you know it's at that point where we have to just kind of see how things play out, because we saw how things played out this past summer, and yet we lifted a third trophy in a row, and so like it's kind of hard to just kind of sit there and think about that too. But all I'm saying is that if I can work Christmas, if I can anchor 4 shows, and damn it, somebody on the board can get something going somewhere else too. I don't care if it was the holidays. I work the holidays.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. They could have worked through Three Kings Day as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, honestly, because we all know that the January transfer window is always a difficult one, not just in Mexico, but all across the globe, right? It's such a short period of time. You only get 1 month, 30 days, and it always seems that, you have to spend big if you want to get someone good, or, if you're trying to save here and there, you're maybe not going to get your targets, and you're probably thinking, well, might as well wait these 6 months and get them on a cheaper in summer. So, in that sense, yes, it's difficult to kind of maneuver through January. But again, it goes back to what we were saying in summer is the sense of urgency just doesn't really seem to be there. But I mean, after winning a 3 campeonato, why would there be a sense of urgency if your team isn't necessarily being dismantled, right?
Right.
But
So
here's the counter argument, right? And this is where I think Ivan you'd agree, right? If we're sitting here talking about all these competitions being a priority, there's depth issues that we desperately need to
Yeah.
figure out.
Yeah.
You
Which
know,
which I can agree. Not I can agree to you too, because like I was trying to like say, like especially over the summer, which it took some people a while to kind of realize what I was trying to say is that like the we thought the money was there. Let's go out and we're probably not gonna get a player that wasn't Quinones. And I even said it too. It doesn't have to be Van Bassel. Whenever we were signing somebody, but just something sensible. And we were bringing in players that made no sense. And again, and I understand your point, Chris. That's a very good point to make. That if we're gonna be competing in Conca and we want to go win that, then we're gonna stay here and want to win the league too. Like it's just there's still no urgency, and that's what's kind of frustrating too. At the same time, regardless of how difficult January can be for clubs, especially America, like it just doesn't feel there. It's frustrating, but to me, it's also hard to make the argument too when after like Ivan said I was making it in summer and into the beginning of the season, and yet even though we felt like we struggled, how much we criticized the team, we never played pretty football. We still went out and won it somehow, which I guess we caught fire at the right time, like they always say in this league. But it's just hard for me. It's just hard to do that, with everything, with January and like Ivan said, teams not getting dismantled. Don't and like me and I've always said, don't fix what's not broken. Well, nothing's really broken with the team. We thought it was going to be broken when we thought Heidenheim was going to leave, but obviously didn't. So it's just kind of like, do we wait and see at this point? And is it going to come back and bite us? I hope not, but that's just where I kind of feel like I am.
And the issue is that we kind of have to look at our issues from last season, right? We threw away games. Let's call it what it is. The reason
Yeah,
we also ended up in that table was because we prioritized that week of CONCACAF or Campeones Cup, right? Where it's like, all right, we have Pumas, we have I believe it was Necaxa. We're gonna just play it safe. The most important game of the week is that campeón, and it ended up being good. But what if it didn't, right? It's the same situation now where it's like you have to take care of these players' health because injuries could happen. Let's call it
yeah,
what it is. It could happen, and are we gonna just go back to playing that ugly ball that we were playing? And it's like we're sitting here saying, "Well, we got the result, but man, like we're suffering. We're not this and that." You can't play every competition like that because every situation is different. If it worked for league, it's also because there's liguilla, right? What if there wasn't any liguilla? What if we had to play a first to first place, right, or whatever? And then same thing when you go and play this Concacaf or you go and play Leagues Cup. Remember, Leagues Cup isn't gonna be a and I know that's a summer thing, but point is, it's all together. It's a whole year thing. I know in the summer we're probably gonna have, we might have, we at this point we don't really know, but there's a good way of potentially having to do all these moves, but still, you would rather have all these depth and all these questions covered now than
yeah,
going into the summer and saying, man, what if we can't replace Fidalgo, for example? Let's say Fidalgo, and we signed he doesn't have that backup that we could guarantee is gonna step in and put in work. In is the competition comes in and we don't know because we have to put them in, and same thing with Davila, for example, right? A lot of us questioned Brian Rodriguez because you sold Cabecita, because you sold Quinones, and now you're looking at Brian and saying, I don't know if you're the guy, and then you're taking forever to bring in his competition to the point where you have to change the formation, and now Brian's coming in from the bench and isn't starting. So to me, I'd rather just cover all these issues and say, you know what, we have that guy that's going to compete for that spot, right? And I think what happened last season too. Sendejas gets injured, and now you're questioning Javairo and Jonah, and then isn't your starter, but you see Cervantes is coming in and he's having these like hiccups and all that. There's just a lot of things that we could avoid if we just simply get these depth, and you don't have to be fancy depth either. Go and get yourself Mexican players on the league that might not be flashy, but they have the upside of competing and whatnot and whatever you want. It doesn't have to go and be a bunch of foreigners, right? So for me, I do think we desperately need that depth.
Yeah, I agree with you that we do have some areas in where we do need to strengthen up. Will we get the answers that we all want? Maybe not, but if there's one thing that this kind of organization or at least this team demands from us is at least kind of the benefit of the doubt that they're gonna be capable of figuring something out. And we question a lot of these Cervantes, moves and Borja and all that stuff. And look, at the end of the day, that tricampeones. So the ifs and buts and maybes are always gonna be there. That's for sure. But honestly, we have to wait and see just kind of how this all unfolds, right? It's barely the first week of January. That's the only positive news that we can take away from this. And hopefully, like we mentioned, right, this first league game necessarily isn't going to be the first matchup for the starters, right? It's not going to be until about maybe after the preseason game against Inter Miami in Vegas. Then after that, I think we should get a pretty well-rounded squad, and hopefully by then, one or two players. This team does not need a lot. And I'm not saying bring in 5, 6 players. Just bring me one, two, maybe even three that can give us depth, or could be a very good alternative in the starting 11. That's it, really. But all right. So that is kind of where we're at. Dylan, you're muted.
Yeah, my bad. Yeah, yeah, I agree. I just want to say, just sensible stuff. Just some sensible stuff is all I ask for.
Perfect. Absolutely. But that's it as far as transfer rumors go. We'll keep you guys up to date, of course. Make sure you guys follow us over on Twitter at Eagle Eye Podcast. These guys are working up to date with everything, making sure that they're giving you some credible sources and not some just random Twitter guy that decided to kind of stir the pot because he wanted to tweet out just something random and put Global Medica's name on the tag. Ultimately, though, again, if buts or maybes at this stage, nothing concrete. We'll keep you guys up to date with everything going on week in, week out on the podcast. But of course, follow us over on Twitter. You guys are up to date just faster that way. All right. Well, gentlemen, let's close out the episode and let's give these people a preview for the upcoming match against Queretaro on Friday. So, again, I alluded to this a little bit earlier, but this is not necessarily going to be the best Club America match you're probably going to see this season. And that's, I guess, okay. I think we're all okay with this, right? I think we're all okay with America going out there fielding nothing but under 23 players and obviously getting those minutes under their belts that they're desperately going to need to fulfill in regards to kind of this youngster rule. But ultimately, it also gives the starters more time to prepare and more time to rest and kind of come back in a much better level. Do you guys agree to that? Disagree to that? Or what do you guys think?
I think that the most important thing is to get that youngster rule out of the way. Hurry up, and because even though it wasn't a big issue, I do think it did sabotage the season in the sense that you could tell some of these coaches, and Jardine was very public in saying, you shouldn't tell us who are looking for results to develop players when that isn't in my job, and while a lot of people would disagree with that because that is being desperate of Mexican talent, in reality is a main coach, a first team coach, isn't here to develop. That's the youth academy's job to do that, right? Those youngsters are just there in the roster, whether they do a good job or not, And while the rule isn't necessarily bad, I do think it has the potential to really sabotage a coach's uh, approach to a game, and to me, this is good. We get to see some players, and we see if they're good enough to compete, right? If they look bad, then you kind of get the idea of, well, this is why they don't get called up, why they don't get these chances because they're really not that good enough, or they show out, and now it's one of those things where it's like, okay, this guy's putting in work, you could look at him as an option, right? Because there is going to be desperate times, right? Especially when we're talking about all these tournaments, there is going to be desperate times, and it's good to know, right? A friendly in the U.S., while it could be intense, it's also very, pointless. It's I don't think coaches are looking at those games and saying, what does this player give me? You know, they're probably looking at it as a scrimmage game that they could have in Coapa. You know, so for me, you know, I'm cool with it. You know, these two games, if I'm not mistaken, are going to be pure, you know, U20 and a couple veterans that really do need it. You know, just in case uh, they're looked upon more. But at the end of the day, you can't really complain. Now, I will say, let's hope we get good results out of these games because it could be very ugly if we go into this season with two losses, and this is where we're gonna be kind of panicking because that's when we're gonna start looking at the calendar.
Well, don't
Yeah.
we need to lose so we can keep the pattern going? So we'll know we'll win a trophy at least.
Well,
True,
no, actually,
true.
we need to win, Dylan.
No,
We
he
need to
needs
win because
he
remember
needs
the
the
game against
week one,
Tijuana
the week
it was
last
one
one.
games.
season. Yeah, he won it.
Oh, he
Oh,
won last season, huh?
All right.
Oh, you're
okay. I thought
right.
this
You're
off
Yeah,
right.
we
Clausura,
won.
I
We
think.
won
Yeah.
against Tijuana. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, it's gonna be an interesting one. We do have a predicting starting 11 that I mean, it's coming from Claro Sports. We'll see how true that starting 11 is, and I'll read it out in just a moment. But I just kind of want to give people a perspective of what's going on and why America is doing what they're doing in regards to these youngsters. So obviously Querétaro is the game on Friday. America doesn't have anything to play for after that. And a week later, when they travel over to Vegas to play Inter Miami and maybe see 15 minutes of Lionel Messi on the pitch. And then after that, they have another week and then they'll play against Santos in Torreona. That's the game that I think we'll start seeing the starters. I think that's the true matchup that America starts to play because that's ultimately 3 weeks to give the starters time to get ready to unfold and prepare themselves for the Clausura, which I think is more than enough time, Dylan.
Yeah. No, I think so too. Um, I mean, maybe you see like one or two Friday just to give them like 5 minutes. You know, you always see those late subs, but I don't know what 5 minutes could be with them too. But you know, especially coming after the break that they needed, especially after winning the league. By 3 weeks, you know, like I said, if we put some good string of results somehow, some way, you know, these first 2 weeks of the league, and then by then, you know, let's pick up the pace and let's go. You know, got a lot of work to do this coming Clausura.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's talk about this possible starting 11 that Claro Sports is talking about. You know, obviously, America traveling on the road to La Corregidora over in Querétaro. They're saying that America's going to come out with a 4-4-2 formation, right? They're, obviously, Rodolfo Cota is going to be in goal. That someone that we saw a lot last tournament is going to be playing on that right hand side. I know some people prefer him in the middle of the pitch, but Harine and the coaching staff, I think, like him on that right hand side. In the center back partnership is going to be everyone's favorite Nestor Araujo, and then of course Miguel Vasquez, who I think just showcased in that semifinal against Cruz Azul. So I'm very excited to see him get some minutes under the belt. And then of course on the left back is going to be Rosano, aka AJ Junior. Shout out to AJ, of course. And on the right hand side in this 4-4-2, kind of in the right mid position, it's going to be a kid named Alvarez. And on the left hand side, it's going to be um his name's not Carlos Vela, right?
No,
What is his
Cristo,
what is his name?
Cristo.
Cristo Vela. So
Yeah,
it's Carlos Vela's nephew. By if any of you guys were wondering, there is some correlation
Alejandro
and
Vela's
relation right
son.
there. There you go. Alejandro Vela, his son, debuting for Las Águilas del América, which is on as his dad played for Cruz Azul.
And Chivas.
And then in the midfield, and Chivas, yeah. In the midfield, we're gonna have two players that I think we want to see more from. One is obviously Chiquito Sanchez. He needs to demonstrate and he needs to step up. And this is kind of a good way to kind of rear him into that because he is gonna be the egg, the leader in this starting 11. He is kind of gonna be I guess the one orchestrating everything and really making things happen. And so he's gonna carry a lot of weight in that sense. And then, of course, next to him is going to be Miguel Ramirez, aka Isco. I know we had a lot of confusions whenever we were talking about him on the podcast last time. They thought we were bringing in ex Real Madrid Isco, but that's not the case. It is our youngster who looked very well in the minutes that he did get last season. So coming in this season, hopefully he's able to break into the first team. And then up top, Patricio Salas, which is a name we haven't seen in quite a while, and then of course Esteban Lozano back from his European tour. Gentlemen, you guys like the starting 11 or no?
I mean, you can't hate it. I mean, we don't really know about a lot of these players, so it's like, we just wish them the best, and hopefully they show out, right? Because we do need that depth, and you know, curious how the bench would look like. I wonder if there's any other veteran players, but if there's not, you gotta wish them the best, and hopefully they're able to show out with this opportunity. And if they don't, hopefully they're willing to handle any criticism that goes their way, because when you play for a big club, there's definitely going to be criticism.
No, yeah, 100% there will be, and most of it will come from me. So I hope they're ready.
At least he admits it.
2 minutes in, too.
2 minutes in, not even 2 minutes, like 30
Yeah.
seconds.
Well, we'll see which one of these becomes the scapegoat for Friday night's matchup. I mean, Dylan, there's some names here that obviously ever since we've started the podcast, we've always rooted for these youngsters to get minutes and to kind of showcase and break into the first team. The likes of seeing Dagoberto again, Isco and Esteban Lozano, players that have been kind of seen throughout this America for at least a year now, or maybe a little bit less for some. But a good test and a good opportunity to hopefully see these kids break through. Because at the end of the day, what you want is for them to come in and kind of make their way into the first team.
Yeah, and I think if we really look at it, looking at the lineup, so I think you have potentially three key pivotal players, to really break out into the first team, whether it be throughout the Clausura or, in the summer somehow, show out even a little bit more and then be impactful players come, the Aventura. I think you look at Lozano, Vasquez, and Espinosa. I mean, I think those are really key players right there that could definitely, show out, especially like you said, Ivan Vasquez against Cruz Azul. This is a really good test for them to really show why, they wear the colors and what and why they play this game too.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we know that Friday's match is not going to be no walk in the park, especially with these on the pitch. But yet, I do have some optimism that they can give us a result away in Querétaro. I know that may sound a little bit far-fetched, or maybe some of you are at home are thinking, absolutely, this team is capable of winning this match. So, with that said, gentlemen, I want your scoreline prediction for Friday's matchup. So, Chris, what is your prediction for Friday's game?
I predict a super boring, conservative game where AJ falls asleep before the half while he's covering the game, but America wins a 1-0 game.
Okay, 1-0. I like it. Dylan, what are you going with?
I'm sorry, guys, but I think this is even a decent result, but I think it's going to be a 1-1 draw.
Okay, I'm honestly, I like it. I'm not against a 1-1 result with the youngsters. Yeah, I might say otherwise on Friday, but we'll see. We'll see how my mood changes in that sense. But not bad, absolutely. I'll be adventurous and I'll say 2-1 America. I don't know from where. I don't know how. Maybe Nestor Araujo scores 2 goals off a corner or something. Something wild. But I'll go 2-1 America, which is maybe be a little bit delusional, but still, I want to have faith in this team and these players and the coaching staff. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, should be an interesting game. That game is going to be at 5 p.m. Pacific. 7 p.m. Central and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You guys can catch that game over on, I believe it's VIX.
TUDN. Well,
No, it's TUDN.
My
Actually,
app says TUDN, yeah.
yeah, my app says TUDN as well. So you guys can catch that game on TUDN. All right.
The women's
With
play
that
the
said,
same
gentlemen,
day
anything else
on
to add
VIX,
on it?
right? The women play on the same
And
day.
against the same rival.
Yeah, that's why I was kind of tripping
Yes.
right now. I was like, but we're away, right?
And they're home. Yeah.
Okay, makes sense.
All right. Shout out to the ladies who won their first game against Cruz Azul yesterday. Shout out to AJ too for covering the match. With that said, though, anything else to add on before we kind of wrap it up here?
I think I'm good.
Nothing. Okay.
Yeah, nothing. Nothing. I mean, after all the rumors and transfer news, there really isn't much to talk about. I think everything got covered before we were able to hop on the pod.
Absolutely. All right. If that is the case, I think we should wrap it up here. I just want to say thank you to everyone in the chat, even though I wasn't able to necessarily bring you guys onto the live show. Shout out to IP Jr., Ricardo, Ritual, AP Jr., Midwestern Cholo. Thank you guys for always coming on to the live show and throwing us a comment or two on the chat. And again, my apologies to all of you who were watching this live and were thinking this isn't necessarily what we are used to seeing from you guys. But yeah, like I mentioned, we're gonna make sure that we give you guys a much better show next week. And yeah, stay tuned. And you know, we're happy to bring in the new year with you guys, and hopefully, again, cover and do some epic stuff with Club America. So here's to a very fruitful 2025, and hope the same for all of you watching and listening. So with that said, gentlemen, thank you so much, Dylan and Chris, for taking the time out to come on and talk all things Club America.
Yes, sir. Anytime.
Always.
All right. Perfect. All right, then. Well, with that said, you guys have a wonderful night. Make sure you follow us over on Twitter and Instagram at EY Podcast. We'll bring you guys up to date with everything going on and get you guys ready for that game on Friday. We'll be back next week to give you guys a preview of Messi and friends in Vegas. And then, of course, any more club news along the way. But yeah, with that said, have a wonderful night. Take care. And as always, Arriba la América. Good night.
Ladies and gentlemen, this was another production of the Eagle Eye Podcast, the #1 source for all things Club America in English. Make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Eagle Eye Podcast and get all the latest news and coverage. And subscribe to our podcast wherever it is you may listen.